Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the weekly show with Aditya. A half an hour show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in association with Dusra.net, the number one website. This is episode 117 on the 25th of September 2019. While the men's team could not defend a total of 130 against South Africa, their teammates from the women's team did it without any fuss. In the women's division, a total of 130 is equivalent of 160 for the men's match. So for the women, chasing 130 is as hard as the men chasing 160. And the difference here is the attitude the women have. Now we see that the women cricketers are not muscular, and strength and conditioning are not part of their fitness regime. So that is why we see boundary ropes being brought in. So instead of the boundary ropes being 5 meters from the hoardings, we have the boundary ropes in the women's matches at least 15 centimeters from the hoarding. In fact, there are no hoardings as far as the women's matches are concerned. Now, if you remember, if you used to watch a normal India match, let's say 25 years ago, and you saw that the grounds were of not good quality, they were of inferior quality, as in the grounds, the condition of the grass, as well as the stands. This is what the women's team have been provided for them, while the men's team have moved on to what the Australian grounds used to be 18 years ago or before that. The women's team are now, as we see them, as a second class citizen. They are not given the same conditions as the men's matches, unlike in any other sport. In no other sport will you see this discrepancy that the women have shorter boundaries or they have poor or inferior quality grounds to play on as compared to football or hockey or any other sport. The only difference was that for the first time we saw a women's match being given a day and night status. Means instead of that 10 a.m. start, we had a 7 p.m. start. And this is only because the next year's Women's 20 over World Cup will be played under similar light conditions. So they are just giving them the opportunity to get themselves acclimatized. If this tournament was not scheduled keeping in view the World Cup, we may have seen the matches being scheduled early in the morning at 10, which is ridiculous in every fiber of my being. But nevertheless, matches are now being scheduled at 7 p.m. and we saw a capacity crowd. But how is a capacity crowd of 8,000 and more something to be proud of? But that's how this sport, especially in the women's division, is scheduled and the attitude we have towards it. In fact, I would say that the women's team are luckier than the men's team because the women's team have been allowed to play in other 20 over tournaments. Because unlike the men's team, they do not play all year around. They play once in 3 or 4 months. So when they are not playing at the international level, they have been allowed to play at the domestic level, and that too is either restricted to the 50 over or the 20 over tournament, as the Indian Cricket Board has made it clear that test matches are not for women. They would not be able to survive 5 days. No DRS, smaller towns, smaller grounds is how we interpret women's evolution in this sport, and I find it highly paradoxical. The quality of commentators is also equally inferior, like the quality of the umpires and the ground conditions. And the hype that we have created around this Mission 2020 with respect to the 20 over World Cup is not, at least for now, being projected towards the women's division. In fact, in any other sport, the women are given more respect than the sport of hockey and cricket itself. Will such rules change or not, at least at the domestic international level, is a question we will be asking ourselves forever. But the women's team defending 130 wasn't something new. Yes, 130 isn't enough in any format of the sport, but for the women's division, 130 is almost like a winning score, especially when you have 4 or 5 spinners in the team. And here we presume that there is no middle order muddle. And the organizers at the highest level have tried to give importance to both the genders by scheduling the tournament at different times so that we can concentrate on one particular gender at one point in time. So the Women's World Cup is in February, March, and the Men's World Cup in the same country is in October, November. But we know which particular World Cup will be given the higher importance. And it's not something new, because this attitude we have towards women's cricket, which was at best farcical when they reached the final of the 2017 50 over World Cup, extends to the football team, a sport for us which only revolves around the likes of Messi, Ronaldo, and any player from either the UK or the Europe or at least Russia. In fact, for us, Indian players do not exist. And this discrepancy has also been highlighted by the current Indian captain in Virat Kohli, whom we consider to be an fitness icon as far as this sport is concerned, but that is not entirely true. If we go back into the past, which is just 19 years from now, the first ever Indian athletic and fit fielders were Yuvraj Singh and Mohammad Kaif, who could have rivaled a jaunty Rhodes when he was active. A few purists could argue that a certain Mohammad Azharuddin and Ajay Jadeja, along with Robin Singh, were also good fielders. Well, one can call them good fielders, but they were never athletic. In fact, Azharuddin, Jadeja, Robin Singh would never come close to what we call the standards of cricket. And it was only with the entry of Yuvraj Singh and Mohammad Kaif, who were, I could say, the first proper fielders in this sport, and then the likes of Jadeja, Raina, and now Kohli have taken this fielding craze forward to more astronomical levels. But let's talk about this more. Let's presume if Kohli was not a cricketer, which sport he would play. The common theory is that if Kohli was not a cricketer, he would be a footballer. But I do not agree with this. For me, Kohli, who prides himself on being aggressive, would have been a wrestler, a boxer, or a MMA artist. And if we look at an alternate universe where Kohli was playing football, there is no guarantee that Kohli's supposed alternative career would have propelled Indian football as a whole to greater heights. And this shows in Kohli's attitude as well. He says that for him, just like any other Indian fanatic football fan and those world around, football stops and starts at Messi, Ronaldo, and now the likes of Mohamed Salah and Mbappe and Neymar. And before that, a Zidane or a David Beckham. Irrespective of the fact that what is the ranking of the Indian football team in the world rankings, it may be 105, but it has no semblance on the fact that why is Indian football struggling. Apart from the infrastructural issues and the money invested, which is not enough, it's a deliberate attempt to ignore this sport as a whole, which is from the passive stakeholders. So it's a matter of shame when Virat Kohli, who is presumed to be a sports icon, speaks of Ronaldo and contemporaries from Europe and UK instead of talking about and encouraging Indian footballers, because we know that when people like Virat Kohli endorse other sports person, it does make a difference to our psyche. So what he presumes and says that his fondness for Ronaldo and others and not one single Indian footballer, it is nothing but a matter of shame and embarrassment. And let's leave apart the questions of patriotism and nationalism because they are fringe and abstract topics. It's not about the question of patriotism and nationalism, but the fact that we take Kohli's words to be gospel. He has to be smart enough to say that let's support Indian football not only in terms of being fans but also help the Football Association invest in this sport the same way the Indian Cricket Board started investing. And even our fondness for the sport of wrestling, shooting, badminton, and others only came when they performed at a level which stunned and shocked the entire Indian subcontinent. Because if the performance of 2016 had not happened, then we would have not even seen the names of Vinesh Fogart, Sakshi Malik, PV Sindhu, and others being even mentioned. Also to include a Deepa Karmakar. And as time has progressed, the 2016 Olympics has become sort of a benchmark. Well, there were performances in the Olympics before. We had solitary performances. We had the likes of Yogeshwar Dutt or Sushil Kumar, Abhinav Bindra, and to some extent a PT Usha and many others. But the 2016 Olympics was a collective performance in multiple sports. So that is why we keep going back to this particular tournament. In football, the fact that we have so many tournaments, we have a state sponsored national tournament which is called the Santosh Trophy. We have a semi-private tournament called the I-League and the ISL, and this confuses many individuals as well as the sports association as to which is the premier sport which can match the likes of the Italian league or the Bundesliga or those multiple European and United Kingdom leagues. So my solution is that let's integrate all this into one, and let's not get into any frivolous debate about which is a better tournament, is the I-League or the ISL as a whole spoiling the idea of football with private backed investments. If the national football tournament, which is called the Santosh Trophy, and this semi-private backed tournament, which is called the I-League and the ISL, they are integrated into one under one body without the label of whether it is private or state sponsored, maybe the structure and the attitude towards football will change. This also means that inter-school, inter-university tournaments must also be taken seriously. So if the scouts who are doing a job in cricket, where they go to the remotest corners of the country and find cricketers who are different and are talented and give them a platform on these national tournaments. Why can't we do the same in football? And if it's happening, why can't we give it a more structured method instead of arguing over semantics and unnecessary technicalities? It's no surprise that Messi received the FIFA's Men Player of the Year, and not one single Indian was voted in this. Even our own Indian coach and Indian captain voted for Messi and others, which is nothing but a matter of shame and embarrassment. And then we say that Indian football is struggling. Well, if you look at how these things are done, it is obviously struggling. In tennis, we are fixated with the likes of Federer, Nadal, Serena Williams, and a few individuals who are coming up, but those will take some time before we bow before them. In football, we cannot move beyond these individuals. The lacunae of sponsorships cannot be an excuse for the present condition of football. It has to be more than just the money being invested. And wouldn't it feel good, though these prizes are equally abstract, if the FIFA's Men Player of the Year is received by an Indian, or at least someone from the Asian part of the world, or the best goalkeeper after the performance of Gurinder Singh Sandhu in a particular football match, to save that chances of not qualifying for a future tournament? Should he not be in the nomination for a goalkeeper? The award was for the FIFA's Men's Player of the Year, not FIFA's European Player of the Year. In cricket, Indian players do receive such accolades. Why? Because not are they only good in the sport, but the outside infrastructural help is also a lot. Sponsors, brands, so many things make up these individuals. So for now, why don't we give an Arjuna award to, let's say, a Sunil Chetri or a Bechung Bhatia? Why not? What is wrong in doing that? Haven't they been performing well? Isn't their performances of a noteworthy mention, at least on the Indian level when we give these awards? Why not give it to a Indian football person, be it the men's division or the women's division, irrespective of whether they are losing, winning, or what their overall record is? Because despite the absurdity and the farcical nature of giving such awards, if such awards are given to a football player, then maybe few may rise from the ranks and we may see the Indian football team's ranking jump upwards. But till the time such miracles happen, we will be in awe of a Messi, Ronaldo, and others. And we will see potential football players who play, let's say, a few kids are playing on the streets. They are wearing the shirts of Messi and Ronaldo because these individuals have monopolized the sport in terms of players as well as branding and their names on t-shirts. So the change is not only in terms of infrastructure and investments, but a behavioral and a psychological change as well. Until then, we might as well give a Arjuna award to a Messi or Ronaldo or Mohammad Salah, the way we idolize them. This ends part 1 of this episode. Stay tuned for part 2. Welcome to part 2 of this episode. It's Wednesday night, so it's time for the world of WWE. Kofi Kingston now faces his biggest test when he will face Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. As I said last week, Brock Lesnar, after his multiple tries at regaining the Universal Championship, has now turned his attention to the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. And this will be a test for Kofi Kingston, not in terms of the physical prowess, but more at the psychological level with the presence of Paul Heyman, as we see, who is adept at distracting Lesnar's opponents. So he will have to deal with the physical prowess of Lesnar and the psychological distractions which can be an impediment in him retaining his championship. But Kingston may do well to take a leaf out of the book of Seth Rollins, who was on the offensive the moment the match started. So the only way Brock Lesnar can be put on the defensive is if Kofi Kingston immediately starts with his offensive moves. So it would be interesting as to how Kingston and Lesnar go on with their duel. On the other hand, Rollins, in the space of a week, has two huge matches to contend with. First, he will have to face Rey Mysterio, who in many terms has been an idol for the younger wrestlers. Mysterio, who defeated four other equally potent wrestlers in a fatal five-way match, whose winner would face Rollins at a season premiere of Raw. He defeated wrestlers as accomplished as AJ Styles, Shinsuke Nakamura, Bobby Roode, and Ricochet. So another iconic match between these two accomplished wrestlers for the very first time. But this will not end things for Rollins if he is able to defend his title. At this point, it looks like he will, because he has been scheduled to face Bray Wyatt at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view match. So let's see how the Mysterio Rollins match goes on, because if Mysterio loses, then we might see a triple threat match being conducted between Wyatt, Rollins, and Mysterio. Bray Wyatt, who has changed his persona over the last few months and has been given the caricature of this frightening individual which was carried on for so many years by the likes of Undertaker and Kane, now will have to continue this frightening persona to psychologically affect Seth Rollins. Unlike Kofi Kingston, for Rollins, it would not be a physical battle but more of a psychological one, as Bray Wyatt is known to upset his competitors' momentum by eerie and frightening moves which can upset the best of the wrestlers' momentum. And as always happens in the pre-match promotion, Bray Wyatt has been given the upper hand. But the pre-match promotions and the in-ring performances are two different things as far as the WWE is concerned. Unlikely alliances and Roman Reigns is the story that WWE is projecting. So Daniel Bryan becomes his latest tag team partner as he faces Luke Harper and Eric Roman in a tag team match at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. After partnering with the likes of Undertaker, now Reigns has a new partner but even more ferocious opponents, as his rivalry with the likes of Luke Harper and Eric Roman reaches a climax. Daniel Bryan, who was in a short-term alliance with Eric Roman, now finds himself on the other side of this game. and it will be very interesting as to how Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns shape up for their tag team match, as these two could be future opponents for a world title match. So stay tuned to this WWE special every Wednesday, and I will be back next week with more such analysis. Please send your valuable suggestions through your comments and audio recording to the email ID adityatherewriter@gmail.com. You can also like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and Facebook page, and stay tuned for the next episode.